Homeless kid gave his only meal to a crying woman at the bus stop. He didn't know her ring meant the chapter. Jay knew the exact sound a stomach makes when it finally gives up. It wasn't a growl anymore. It was a hollow, angry twist, like someone wringing out a wet towel inside you. He stood under the bus stop awning with a paper bag clutched to his chest, guarding it like it was gold, while the night tried to freeze him in place. The bag held one thing: a soggy cheeseburger he'd gotten from a diner trash can before the cook saw him. The bun was smashed, the fries were cold, it was still food, it was all he had. Across the street, the shelter line had already closed. A security guard had waved Jay off like he was a stray dog, and the glass doors had swallowed the warmth behind them. Jay could have walked to the overpass where the wind didn't cut so hard, but the bus stop had light. Light meant people could see you. People seeing you meant you might not get jumped. He kept his eyes on the road, counting headlights, counting minutes, counting breaths. This was how you survived, one small math problem at a time. Then he heard it. Not a laugh, not a shout. A broken sound, like someone trying to breathe through a fist. A woman sat on the bench at the far end of the stop, half hidden behind the route map. Jay hadn't noticed her before. Maybe she'd been there the whole time, too quiet to register. She wore a dark coat that looked expensive even in the dim light, hair pulled back tight like she'd tried to stay in control and failed anyway. Her shoulders shook. Tears dropped straight onto her hands. Jay's first instinct was to look away. You didn't stare. Staring invited conversation, and conversation invited trouble. But the sound came again, raw, panicked, the kind of cry you hear when something is wrong in a way that doesn't fix itself. He took a step without deciding to. "Ma'am?" His voice came out thin. You okay?" The woman snapped her head up. Her eyes were red, but what hit him wasn't sadness. It was fear, sharp and scanning, like she expected someone to be standing behind him with a knife. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, just don't." Jay froze. His hand tightened on the bag. He should have listened. He should have backed off and let the night swallow her. That's what the street taught you. Don't touch other people's storms. But she looked at his bag like it was a life raft. Jay swallowed. The hollow twist in his stomach screamed at him to stop. Instead, he walked closer, slow, palms open so she knew he wasn't a threat. "It's not much," he said, and held out the paper bag like he was offering a peace treaty. "But you're shaking." The woman stared at the bag, then at him, then down at her hands like she couldn't remember how hands worked. She took it with fingers that trembled so hard the paper crinkled like leaves. For a second, she didn't eat. She just held it to her chest and breathed like the smell alone was keeping her alive. Jay stepped back, pretending he didn't care, pretending the hunger wasn't chewing through his ribs. He shoved his hands into his hoodie pockets, feeling the coin-sized hole in the fabric where cold air sneaked in. She took a bite. Small, careful, like she was afraid food was another thing the world could take away if she moved wrong. When she swallowed, something in her face broke all over again. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. I didn't mean..." "It's fine," Jay cut in quickly, because apologies made things complicated. "Just eat." Her gaze flicked to his knuckles, scraped, dirty, the skin split from cold. Then it drifted to his wrists, thin under the frayed cuffs, and finally it landed on her own right hand as she pulled the bag closer. That's when Jay noticed the ring. It wasn't a diamond, it wasn't shiny at all, it was heavy-looking, matte, like dark steel. The top had an engraved symbol he couldn't read from where he stood, sharp lines, a small crown shape, and beneath it a word that looked like CH something. The kind of ring men wore when they didn't need money to be dangerous. Jay's throat went tight. The woman followed his eyes and jerked her hand under the coat like she'd been burned. "Don't look at that," she said, almost angry, then immediately softer. "I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. I'm just... I can't let anyone see it right now." Jay nodded fast. "I don't care about jewelry." "It's not jewelry," she murmured, and the way she said it made the night feel suddenly smaller. A bus whooshed past without stopping, empty, the driver not even glancing. The wind slapped their faces with sleet so fine it felt like sand. On the other side of the road, two guys loitered by a closed laundromat, pretending not to watch. Nobody in this neighborhood asked questions unless they were paid to. The woman took another bite. Her breathing steadied by a fraction. She kept her eyes down, but Jay could see her watching the road in her peripheral vision, tracking every car like it might be the one. Jay had been watched like that before. The look of somebody waiting for punishment to arrive. He shifted his weight. "You got somewhere to go?" She laughed once, bitter and quiet. "I did." Jay was about to say something, anything, when headlights slowed at the corner. Not a bus, not a taxi. A black sedan with tinted windows rolled too smooth for this part of town. It didn't stop at the light like it should have. It crawled, creeping, as if the driver was scanning the sidewalks. Jay felt the woman stiffen like a wire pulled tight. Her fingers crushed the paper bag. The burger slipped inside. She didn't seem to notice. The sedan turned into the lane closest to the curb and eased forward, then paused directly across from the bus stop. The passenger window slid down a few inches, just enough for a voice to leak out. "Ma'am," a man called, calm like he was ordering coffee. "You don't have to make this hard." Jay's heart kicked. The woman's face went white under the streetlight. Jay didn't know her name, didn't know why she was here. But he knew that tone. That was the tone of someone who believed they had the right to take you. The woman rose too fast. Her knees wobbled. She looked like she might run, but her feet didn't move. Like fear had glued her to the concrete. Jay's brain screamed at him to step away, to let it happen, to disappear. Instead, he stepped forward. He moved between the bench and the curb, blocking the sedan's view of her as much as a skinny kid in a torn hoodie could. He lifted his chin and forced his voice to steady. "Bus stop's public," he said. "Keep driving." The man in the car chuckled. "Son, this doesn't involve you." Jay felt the woman behind him inhale sharply, like she wanted to pull him back, like she didn't want him to get hurt for her. That alone made Jay stay planted. "I said keep driving," Jay repeated louder, because sometimes volume was armor. The sedan's engine idled, patient. The window lowered another inch. Jay could see the edge of a man's cheek, the glow of a cigarette, the cold shine of a watch. "Last chance," the man said. "Step aside." Jay's hands shook, so he clenched them into fists in his pockets. He wished he had something, anything, a pipe, a brick, a phone. All he had was emptiness and a stomach full of regret. Behind him, the woman whispered, "Kid, please." Jay didn't turn. "Go," he muttered back. "Run." "And to where?" she breathed, and it wasn't sarcasm. It was truth. The sedan's rear door clicked. Jay heard it clearly. Metal latch, seal breaking, and the sound sliced straight through the cold. The two guys by the laundromat suddenly found the sidewalk fascinating and drifted away like smoke. Even the streetlight buzz seemed to quiet, as if the whole block was holding its breath. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching this from. The back door began to open, slow as a threat, and Jay realized the man didn't need to scare her into the car. He was doing it because fear was free. A shoe touched the pavement, then another. A tall shape unfolded from the back seat, coat collar up, moving with the lazy confidence of somebody who'd never been told no. Jay caught a flash of something in the man's hand, maybe keys, maybe something worse. Then it was gone in his pocket. Jay took one step toward the curb, ready to do something stupid, ready to get hit, ready to bleed, when the woman behind him made a strangled sound and grabbed his sleeve. Her coat shifted. For half a second, her ring flashed under the streetlight, dark steel, crown symbol, and the word etched clear enough for Jay to read, "The Chapter." Jay didn't know what it meant, but he felt the woman's grip tighten like she was bracing for impact. The man's posture changed. No swagger now, just calculation, as if the air itself had turned expensive. And the man stepping out of the sedan looked straight at it. The man from the sedan didn't rush. He didn't need to. He closed the door with a click and walked toward the bus stop like he owned the sidewalk. Up close, he looked clean in a way that didn't belong here. Dark coat, trimmed beard, the kind of boots that never saw puddles. His eyes weren't angry. They were bored. "Kid," the man said, voice low, almost friendly. "You don't want to be brave for somebody you don't know." Jay felt Mara's fingers still hooked in his sleeve, shaking. The ring was hidden again, but he could feel the weight of it in his head, the word he'd read like a warning sign. The chapter. Jay swallowed. She's not going anywhere with you. The man's gaze slid past Jay's shoulder. Mara, he called, like he'd said her name 1,000 times. Come on, you made your point. Let's not do this in public. Mara's breath hitched. Jay glanced back just enough to see her eyes widen at her own name being used. She wasn't just afraid. She was angry, too, like fear had finally found something to lean on. I'm not your property, she said, voice thin but steady. The man smiled without warmth. No, but you're somebody's, and he's waiting. Jay felt his spine stiffen. Somebody's. The words were a chain, said so casually it made Jay's hands curl into fists again. The man stopped 3 steps away, close enough Jay could smell cigarette smoke and expensive cologne trying to cover something sharper underneath. Step aside, he repeated, softer now, like he was talking to a dog. Jay didn't move. The man's eyes dropped to Jay's paper-thin hoodie, to the shoes with the split sole. You hungry? He asked. You look hungry. Jay's throat burned. Keep talking and you'll get hungry too, Jay said, and he hated how small it sounded. The man chuckled. Then his gaze flicked toward the bench, toward Mara's hands, as if he could still see the ring through fabric. You don't understand what you're standing in front of, he said. Jay lifted his chin. Then explain it. The man leaned in a fraction. That ring on her finger? It means people die when she says a word. It means doors open. It means protection. He paused, watching Jay's face. But it also means she belongs. And tonight, she stepped out of line. Mara sucked in air behind Jay. Shut up. The man's smile widened. There she is. Jay's stomach twisted again, not from hunger this time. From the way the man enjoyed it, Jay's mind raced through options. Run, fight, scream. Screaming wouldn't do anything. Nobody cared about a homeless kid yelling. Fighting would be one punch and it was over. Run. He turned his head slightly. When I say go, he whispered, you go. Don't think. Mara's voice came out like sandpaper. He'll catch me. Jay didn't answer because she was probably right. The man shifted his weight and Jay saw his right hand slide into his coat pocket. Slow, practiced, the kind of motion that made you feel stupid for standing still. Jay acted before he could lose his nerve. He stepped forward, closing the distance, making it harder for the man to pull anything out without Jay seeing it. Back up, Jay snapped. The man's eyes narrowed, surprise, then irritation. You've got courage, he said. I'll give you that. The man's left hand shot out, not for Jay, for Mara. He grabbed Jay's shoulder and shoved him sideways with a force that punched the air out of his lungs. Jay stumbled, catching himself on the pole with the root numbers, pain flaring down his arm. In that same motion, the man lunged past him, reaching for Mara's coat. Mara cried out and swung the paper bag like it was a weapon. Fries scattered onto the wet concrete. The man caught her wrist and yanked her up off the bench. Jay saw Mara's other hand fly up, fingers clawing at the man's sleeve, and the ring flashed again. Dark steel, crowned mark, so close the streetlight burned on it. The man's eyes locked onto it. His mouth tightened, like he'd found exactly what he came for. He didn't pull Mara toward the car. He twisted her hand brutally, trying to strip the ring off. Mara screamed. Jay moved without thinking. He drove his shoulder into the man's side with everything he had. The impact wasn't much. Jay was skin and bone, but it was enough to knock the man off balance. The man hissed and shoved back, elbowing Jay in the ribs. A white-hot bolt of pain exploded through Jay's chest. Jay folded for a second, gagging, then forced himself upright and swung a fist. His knuckles slammed into the man's jaw. Jay felt teeth through skin. The man's head snapped to the side, more shocked than hurt, and Jay's fist went numb instantly. For one insane second, the man stared at Jay like he couldn't believe he'd been touched. Then, the man's hand came out of his pocket. A compact pistol, black and casual as a wallet. Jay froze. His brain went empty except for one thought. This is it. Mara stopped screaming. Her eyes went wide and bright with terror. The man didn't aim at Mara. He aimed at Jay, right between his eyes, like Jay was a bug on glass. Now, the man said, voice flat. Step away. Jay's mouth opened, but no sound came. Somewhere down the block, a couple walked out of a corner store, laughing, plastic bags swinging. They hadn't seen yet. Jay wanted to scream at them to run. He couldn't even breathe. Mara's voice cut through the silence. Don't, she said, and it wasn't a plea. It was an order. The man didn't look at her. "You don't get to order anyone tonight." Jay's eyes flicked to Mara's hand. The ring was half off her finger now, twisted at an angle, skin red beneath it. Jay made a choice that felt like falling. He lifted his hands, palms out, and took one slow step backward, drawing the man's attention fully onto him. If the man was looking at Jay, he wasn't ripping Mara apart. "Okay," Jay rasped. "Okay, just don't hurt her." The man's gun tracked with Jay's movement, steady. Behind Jay, Mara suddenly ducked low and shoved herself off the bench toward the far end of the stop, moving fast despite the fear. She wasn't running toward the street. She was running toward the alley between the laundromat and the closed pharmacy, the darkest gap on the block. Jay understood instantly. If she disappeared into the alley, the gun might follow her instead. Jay's lungs burned. He had to keep the man looking at him. "Hey!" Jay barked louder than he'd ever dared. "You want her? You gotta go through me." The words were stupid, hero words, the kind of words people with parents said. The man's eyes narrowed. "I will," he said. He stepped forward and jabbed the pistol into Jay's chest hard enough to bruise. "On your knees." Jay's knees hit the wet concrete, cold soaked through his jeans. His ribs screamed with every breath. The man angled the gun down, pressing it against Jay's forehead. Jay could smell the oil on the metal. He could feel the tremor in his own skull. This was what dying was, a moment that lasted too long. Mara's footsteps splashed behind them, racing. Then, silence. Jay didn't dare look. He kept his eyes locked on the man's face, trying to read what would happen a half-second before it did. The man listened too. His head turned slightly toward the alley. Jay saw his chance and took it. He lunged forward, grabbing the man's wrist with both hands and twisting with all his strength, trying to shove the gun away from his head. The gun bucked in their grip, a sharp metallic jerk. A deafening crack split the night. The bullet punched into the bus stop sign above them, sparks spitting out, metal shrieking. Jay's ears rang so hard he thought he'd gone underwater. The man cursed and drove his knee into Jay's stomach. Jay folded, gagging, the world tilting. The gun came free. Jay looked up just in time to see the man bring it back around. A flash of movement, Mara, charging out of the alley instead of staying hidden. She slammed into the man's arm from the side, throwing off his aim. Another crack ripped the air, the bullet tearing into the asphalt near Jay's knee. Mara grabbed Jay's hoodie and yanked. "Move!" she shouted. Jay scrambled up, pain everywhere, vision tunneling. They ran, stumbling, slipping, toward the crosswalk, toward anything with people. The sedan's engine roared to life. Jay heard the man behind them shout something into his phone, short, urgent words. He wasn't alone. He was never alone. They reached the curb, and headlights blasted them as a car swerved and honked, missing them by inches. Jay dragged Mara onto the median, both of them gasping, wet and shaking. Mara looked down at her hand. Her ring was gone. Her face drained so fast, Jay thought she might faint. "No," she whispered, and it wasn't about jewelry. It was about what came with it. Jay's eyes scanned the street, the sidewalk, the puddles. Nothing. Mara grabbed his arm with a strength that didn't match her trembling. "We have to find it," she said. Jay stared at her. "You almost got shot. We're leaving." Mara's eyes snapped up, wild. "If that ring is in his hands," she swallowed hard. "If he has it, he can walk into places he shouldn't. He can make people believe things. He can start a fire and blame it on us." Jay didn't know who us was, but he believed her. The sedan rolled up to the curb again, angling to cut them off. The window dropped. The man inside was bleeding at the corner of his mouth now, and he was smiling. Jay's chest tightened. "Mara," Jay whispered, tasting her name like it was dangerous. "Who are you?" Mara didn't answer. She just looked past the car, past the street, toward the far end of the block where the night had deepened. A low vibration rose through the pavement. At first, Jay thought it was thunder. Then the sound separated into pieces, multiple engines, heavy, synchronized, coming fast. Mara's eyes glistened with something new. Not relief, not fear, recognition, and the man in the sedan stopped smiling. The rumble wasn't one bike. It was many, heavy engines sinking into a single growl that crawled up the street and through Jay's ribs. The sedan's brake lights flared, then dimmed, like the driver couldn't decide whether to bolt or play innocent. Mara's fingers stayed twisted in Jay's sleeve. "They're here," she whispered, and her voice carried recognition, not relief. Jay didn't ask who. He already felt it, the way the block changed when real power showed up. Even the two guys who'd been lingering by the laundromat slipped away into the darkness without a word, like the street itself was clearing the stage. The first motorcycle rounded the corner, headlights split like a stare. Then, two more. Then a whole line pouring into the street and fanning out with quiet precision. No horns, no shouting. Just bodies and steel taking space. In seconds, the sedan was boxed, one bike tight behind the bumper, two angled at the doors, another up front like a gate. More bikes rolled past and took the corners, blocking the cross street, turning the whole intersection into a cage. The engine stayed idling, low and steady, a warning you could feel in your teeth. Men stepped off their bikes in leather cuts and dark gloves. The patches on their backs were dark in the light, but the lettering still read clear enough for Jay to catch it. The chapter. His stomach sank. The ring wasn't a random thing. It matched them. One of them spotted Mara and walked straight to her, ignoring Jay like he was air until he wasn't. "Ma'am," he said, voice roughened by the cold. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Mara lied. Her wrist was already swelling where the attacker had twisted it, and the lie sounded like a door held shut with a shaking hand. Another man, older, gray at the temples, kept his eyes on her hands. "Where's the ring?" Mara's throat worked. "It's gone." That sentence tightened everything. The bikers didn't panic. They simply closed the circle, shoulders squaring, eyes sharpening, like a switch flipped. A few of them spoke into their phones in short, clipped phrases. Others scanned the sidewalks, the alley mouths, the rooftops, not looking for a ring, looking for the next move. The gray-haired man nodded toward the sedan. "Then it's in there." He approached the driver's window. "Roll it all the way down." The window lowered an inch. The biker's fist went through the glass in one brutal motion. Shards sprayed across the seat. A hand reached in, unlocked the door, and yanked it open like tearing paper. "Out," the biker said. The driver stumbled out, hands raised, breathing hard, eyes wide now, boots crunching on glass. Another biker pinned him against the hood, hard enough to make the metal groan, controlled enough not to look like a beating. The back door opened slowly. The man who'd shoved Jay stepped out and straightened his coat like this was still his street. His jaw was swelling now, mouth cut at the corner. He looked at Mara and tried to smile. "See," he said, "you can't hide." A gloved hand grabbed his throat and drove him into the sedan's side. The door caved with a deep dent. The man coughed, eyes watering. "Where is it?" the biker asked, voice flat. "What?" the man rasped, acting dumb like he'd forgotten what hands were for. A knife appeared, not stabbing, just present. The blade hovered near his cheek, bright and calm. "Don't play," the biker warned. "Not tonight." Mara stepped forward, forcing her voice steady. "Stop. Not here." The biker hesitated, then released the man with a shove. It was the first time Jay saw them take an order from anyone, and it told him exactly who Mara was in this world. The gray-haired man turned to her. "We need you off the street, ma'am. Now." Mara nodded once, but her eyes flicked to Jay. "Dane's coming?" A ripple passed through the group at the name. Respect, fear, something like both. "Minutes," the gray-haired man said. "He heard the call. He's on his way." Jay's stomach dropped. Dane wasn't a cop. Dane was the reason these men moved like one organism. If Dane decided Jay was a problem, there wouldn't be a debate. There wouldn't even be an argument. There would just be a vanishing. The attacker spat blood, eyes flashing at Mara. "He can't save you," he muttered. A punch landed in his ribs, quick and quiet, and he folded with a sharp cough. The biker who hit him didn't look angry. He looked bored, like swatting a fly. Then the gray-haired man's attention cut to Jay like a blade. "You," Jay straightened, pain flaring in his ribs. "Me." "Name," Jay hesitated. "Name's got you found." But there was no point pretending. "Jay." The man looked him over. Split knuckles, wet jeans, hunger carved into his face. "You were with her when it happened." "Yeah," Jay said. "Some guy tried to grab her. He tried to rip the ring off. I didn't take anything." "Rings don't vanish," the gray-haired man said. Jay's jaw clenched. "We fought. We ran." She looked down. It was gone. Bikers shifted closer. Not rough, just inevitable. One of them reached for Jay's hoodie pocket. Jay flinched on instinct, and the biker's hand froze midair. "Easy," the biker murmured. "We're checking." Jay forced himself to stand still, while gloved hands patted him down, pockets, waistband, sleeves, fast and professional. It wasn't like a cop search. It was like inventory. They found nothing. Just lint, a few crumpled coins, and the bitter proof that Jay really was as broke as he looked. Mara stepped in front of Jay. "He didn't take it. He gave me his food. He stood in front of a gun." The gray-haired man didn't even blink. "That's a nice story," he said, "but the ring means something. If it's out there, it's a problem bigger than this sidewalk." Jay wanted to shout that the problem was the man with the pistol, not a piece of metal. But every face around him said the same thing. The metal was the pistol. The symbol was the weapon. A new vibration rose through the engines, one bike coming faster than the rest. The group parted without being told, forming a lane down the middle of the street. A single motorcycle rolled in and stopped dead at the center. The rider swung off, removed his helmet, and Jay felt the air change again. Dane. He wasn't huge. He was controlled. Broad shoulders, close-cropped hair, eyes that didn't waste movement. Calm in the way a locked door is calm. Mara took 2 steps toward him, and her voice cracked despite everything she'd held back. "Dane." Dane didn't answer at first. He scanned her face, her coat, the tremor in her hands, and then his gaze landed on her bare finger. No ring. Something cold settled behind Dane's eyes. Not rage on the surface. Rage organized and waiting. He walked to the attacker who tried to stand tall and failed. Dane grabbed his collar and pulled him close enough the attacker's breath fogged Dane's cheek. "You put your hands on my wife," Dane said quietly. "You fired a gun." The attacker tried to laugh. It came out as a cough. "You think this is personal," he rasped. "It's business." Dane's voice stayed low. "Business doesn't bleed in my street unless I allow it." The attacker's eyes flicked toward Jay, like he wanted a new target, a softer one. Dane followed the glance. For the first time, he looked at Jay. One quick sweep that somehow felt like being stripped clean. Jay felt the weight of it settle on his bruises, his hunger, his existence. "Who's that?" Dane asked. "Kid says he's Jay," the gray-haired man replied. "He was with Mara. Ring's missing. He claims he didn't take it." Dane's gaze stayed on Jay. Missing how? Jay's throat was dry. He was twisting her hand. "We fought. We ran." She looked down, and it was gone. Dane's voice stayed calm. "And where were your hands when it disappeared?" Jay stared at him. "Trying not to die." A couple bikers made a low sound, half amusement, half warning. Dane didn't react. He just watched Jay like he was weighing metal in his palm. Mara stepped beside Dane. "He saved me," she said, firmer now. "He didn't steal anything." Dane finally touched Mara, 2 fingers under her chin, gentle and precise. He turned her wrist, seeing the swelling, the finger marks. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," Mara whispered, but her eyes shone. Dane's jaw flexed. He turned to the gray-haired man. "Search the car. Search them. Find the ring." "Already doing it," the man said. "We've got glass on the seats, nothing on the floor yet." Dane nodded. Then he looked at Jay again. "Bring him," Dane said. Jay's stomach tightened. "Where?" Dane didn't answer. 2 bikers moved in close, one on either side. Not grabbing, but making it clear Jay no longer chose his direction. "Don't run," one murmured near Jay's ear. "Don't lie. You'll make it worse." Jay glanced at Mara. She met his eyes, guilt flashing there now, like she understood her world had just closed around him and there was no clean way to reopen it. A biker called from the curb. "Dane! Found something!" The gray-haired man lifted a dark ring between thumb and forefinger, wet from a gutter puddle. The crown symbol caught the streetlight. Jay's breath hitched. Then the man lifted his other hand. A second ring. Identical. The street went still. Even the engines seemed to hold their breath. Dane's eyes locked on the 2 rings. "Where did you get those?" he asked, voice like ice over steel. "One by the median," the gray-haired man said. "One in the sedan's back seat, tucked under the seat edge." The attacker smiled through blood, and for the first time, Jay understood why. The man wasn't trapped. He was delivering a message. "See?" the attacker whispered. "Now you don't know which one is hers. Now you don't know what's real." Dane looked at Mara's bare finger, then at Jay. and something sharper than suspicion entered his face. Calculation mixed with anger, aimed in every direction at once. "Take them all," Dane said. "Right now. Nobody leaves my sight." They didn't argue after Dane's order. The whole block snapped into motion like a single machine. Two bikers zip-tied the attacker's wrists and shoved him against the dented sedan. The driver got the same treatment, shaking so hard his teeth clicked. Phones, keys, and a spare magazine were emptied onto the hood. The pistol was bagged like it was nothing special. Nobody shouted. Nobody needed to. The engines idled like a low warning. Holt, gray hair, steady eyes, took both rings and sealed them inside a small black pouch. "Nobody touches this," he said, and the men nearest him nodded like he'd read a rule off a wall. Jay tried to step toward Mara, but a biker drifted into his path, silent and firm. Mara's gaze caught Jay's for a second. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and it sounded like she meant it. Dane guided her toward his bike, kept one hand near her elbow without grabbing. He said something low to her. Mara nodded, swallowing hard, then looked back at Jay like she wanted to pull him with her and couldn't. Dane turned to Jay. The streetlight caught the bruise on Jay's throat and the fresh split on his knuckles. "You took a shot for someone you didn't know," Dane said. Jay's ribs burned. He was going to hurt her. Dane's eyes stayed flat. "Why'd you stay?" Jay hated how simple the answer was. Because she was crying. For a beat, Dane just watched him. Then he looked to Holt. Separate vehicles, Mara with me, those two in the back, the kid in the middle. Holt handles him. Jay's stomach dropped. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Holt stepped in close, voice calm as a closed door. "You already are. Get in." They walked Jay to an unmarked dark van. Jay wanted to fight, but fighting would just prove he was trouble. He climbed in. Inside, two bikers sat facing him, knees apart, eyes cold. One had a thin scar splitting his eyebrow. The other wore a plain silver chain and no expression at all. The doors shut, and the world turned into leather smell and engine hum. Jay pressed his forehead to the small window and watched the bus stop lights fade, along with the last place his life still felt like his. The Scarborough biker spoke first, quiet. "You got family, kid?" Jay didn't answer. The biker nodded like he expected that. "Then don't make yourself a problem. Problems get solved." The other biker finally looked up. "He's not a problem yet," he said. "He's a question." Jay swallowed. His stomach pinched with hunger, now louder than his fear, like his body was furious he'd given away its last chance. He caught himself staring at a protein bar tucked into the door pocket. His eyes snapped away fast. Holt spoke from the front seat without turning. "Full name." Jay hesitated, then gave one. It might have been true. It might have been a lie. Holt didn't react either way. "Tell me what happened," Holt said. "Start from when you saw her." Jay ran it through fast. Mara crying, the burger, the sedan creeping, the man with the gun, the ring flashing, the twist of her finger, the run, the ring gone. He described the attacker's face, his voice, the way he tried to peel the ring off like it was the real prize. Holt asked a few sharp follow-ups, where the sedan stopped, which hand held the gun, which way Mara ran first. Jay answered, forcing his memory to stay clean. One wrong detail and he could feel the room around him turning into a trap. The convoy turned off the main road. Gates slid open. Floodlights hit Jay through the window. Yard, bikes lined up, cameras watching. The van rolled in, stopped, and the doors opened. Out. Jay stepped into cold air that smelled like oil and wet asphalt. The building ahead looked plain until he noticed the symbol, crowned mark, painted small and clean on the door. The same mark from the ring. The chapter. They didn't take Jay through the front. Holt led him down a side hall where voices buzzed behind doors, short phrases, clipped names, the sound of printers and maps being slapped onto tables. Jay caught a glimpse through one open doorway, a wall of monitors showing streets, intersections, gas station cameras, not a gang hanging out, a network working. A man in gloves waited by a counter with a medical kit. Mara was there already, coat off now, wrist being wrapped tighter. She flinched when the cloth pressed her bruises. Dane stood behind her, still as a post, watching every touch like he was counting it. Mara saw Jay in the hallway and started to rise. Dane's hand settled on her shoulder, stopping her gently. Mara stayed seated, eyes tracking Jay as he was led past. The look on her face said she was trying to decide how much danger she'd just dropped on him. Holt pushed Jay into a bare room with a metal table and one bright light. The door shut. The quiet pressed in. Holt set the black pouch on the table and opened it. 2 rings slid out. Up close they were identical. Matte steel, crown symbol, the chapter, etched like a sentence carved in stone. Jay stared. There weren't 2. There are now, Holt said. That's the point. Jay's mouth went dry. Why does it matter so much? It's just... Holt's eyes hardened. That ring says she's untouchable. It opens doors. It gives orders. If someone can steal it or copy it, they can walk into places they shouldn't. He tapped the metal once with a knuckle. Soft sound, heavy meaning. A fake ring gets you through a gate. A real ring gets you through a line of men. Jay's pulse thudded. So you think I'm working with him? I think you're in the picture, Holt said, and the picture is getting bigger. Jay's throat tightened. I fed her, that's all. Holt didn't accuse him. He didn't clear him either. Right now you're a question. Questions don't leave until they're answered. The door opened. A younger biker appeared, tense. Dane wants him, now. Holt resealed the pouch and walked Jay down another corridor into the main room of the clubhouse. Wood, leather, a long table, men standing in clusters like they'd been waiting for a storm to arrive. A few faces looked at Jay with pure dislike, like he'd tracked mud onto a clean floor. Mara sat at the bar with her injured hand wrapped. She wasn't drinking the water in front of her. Her eyes went straight to Jay. Relief, guilt, fear, all of it at once. Dane stood near the fireplace, sleeves rolled, calm on the surface. Holt handed him the pouch. Dane opened it and held the rings, one in each palm. The room went silent. He tossed one ring to Mara. She caught it on instinct, then froze, staring down at it like it had turned into a snake. Dane tossed the other ring to Holt. Which one is yours? Dane asked Mara. Mara's fingers trembled. She looked from her ring to Holt's, then up at Dane. I don't know, she whispered. A low murmur rolled through the room. Shock and anger clipped short by fear of Dane's reaction. Jay felt every eye swing toward him like a spotlight. A biker with a shaved head took one step forward, jaw tight. This is why we don't bring strays inside, he muttered. Jay snapped, I didn't ask to be here. The shaved-head biker moved faster than Jay expected. He grabbed Jay's hoodie at the chest and yanked him forward. Jay's feet slid on the wood. Watch your mouth, the biker hissed. Holt stepped in instantly, hand clamping the biker's wrist. Rake, Holt said, voice warning. Rake didn't let go. Kid's breathing too loud for someone innocent. Dane's voice cut across the room, quiet but absolute. Let him go. Rake released Jay like the order burned. Jay stumbled back, ribs screaming. Dane walked to the attacker, who was on his knees near the wall, hands zip-tied, face bruised, still wearing that crooked grin. The driver sat beside him, pale and shaking, eyes begging for mercy from men who didn't offer it. Who gave you the second ring? Dane asked quietly. The attacker spat blood. You've got a leak, he rasped. That's the message. Dane stared at him a moment, then turned, slow, and looked straight at Jay. Jay's throat tightened. I didn't... Dane lifted a hand, stopping him with a gesture alone. He stepped close enough that Jay could see the controlled anger sitting behind his eyes. Why'd you stay? Dane asked again, softer. Jay forced the words out. Because she was alone. Dane held Jay's gaze, then turned to the room. Lock the yard, he said. Nobody leaves. Pull every camera within 3 blocks. Stores, gas stations, traffic cams. I want that bus stop rebuilt frame by frame. He nodded to another man. Sweep the gutters, the alley, the trash. If there's a third ring, I want it. Jay's stomach lurched. Third ring. Dane's eyes came back to Jay, colder now. And the kid goes with the sweep team. Jay jerked. What? Dane leaned in, voice low enough only Jay could hear. If you're telling the truth, you'll help us prove it. His gaze pinned Jay in place. If you're not, you walked into the wrong house on the wrong night. Then he straightened and nodded once toward the door. 2 bikers moved in behind Jay, close, inevitable. Before Jay could move, Holt caught his sleeve. Listen, Holt said under his breath, no sudden moves out there. Keep your hands where they can see them. If the man from the sedan left anything behind, you point, nothing else. He shoved a spare leather jacket into Jay's arms. It swallowed Jay's thin frame, heavy and warm like a lie. Across the room, Mara started to stand again. Dane didn't raise his voice. He only glanced at her and she sat back down, lips pressed tight, eyes pleading at Jay anyway. Rake watched, grin promising trouble. Jay nodded once, acting like the jacket wasn't a leash, not to them. The side exit bolt slid back with a heavy metallic clack. Outside, engines started up one by one, louder than before, like the night itself was revving. Jay realized he wasn't being escorted back to the bus stop to help. He was being taken back into the dark as bait. The leather jacket on Jay's shoulders was warm, but it didn't feel like mercy. It felt like a mark. They rolled back toward the bus stop in a tight pack. 3 bikes ahead, a pickup behind, the van in the middle with Holt driving and Rake watching Jay like he was a loose wire. 2 streets out, Holt killed the headlights and the convoy split, engines dropping to a low purr. Men melted into doorways and behind parked cars, taking corners so fast it looked rehearsed. Holt slid the van door open. "Walk it," he said. "Show me clean." Jay stepped onto the wet sidewalk. Same awning, same flickering light, same smell of cold exhaust and damp concrete. Only now the darkness was full of chapter eyes. He pointed with stiff fingers. "I was here by the pole. She was on that end of the bench." The sedan stopped curb lane, right there. He swallowed and forced himself to keep going. He grabbed her wrist, tried to twist the ring off. I hit him. He pulled a gun. It went off, hit the sign. We ran. She noticed it missing on the median. Holt's flashlight swept the ground. Cold fries, the torn bag, a smear of sauce. Jay's stomach cramped at the sight. It was proof of how stupid and hungry he'd been. Rake towed the bag. "You really handed this over?" Jay didn't answer. If he spoke, his voice would shake. Holt moved to the sign and aimed the light upward. The bullet scar was still there, a bright, raw notch in the metal. He reached up with a gloved hand and pried at the edge. A flattened slug dropped into his palm with a dull tick. "Bag it," Holt said, and someone immediately produced a small evidence pouch like they'd done this their whole lives. 2 men worked the gutter with magnets, another checked the alley with a mirror and a light. Holt crouched at the base of the sign and scraped a fingertip through the wet grit. "Filings," he murmured. "Dark metal." Jay frowned. "From the ring?" "From work," Holt said. "Not from a drop." A magnet clinked. One of the men held up a thin curved sliver of dark metal like a shaved-off strip. Holt took it and turned it under the light. "Casting scrap," he said. Jay's pulse jumped. "They were making rings out here?" Holt's gaze tracked the sidewalk like it might confess. "Or finishing one. Quick polish, quick fit, quick switch." Rake's eyes stayed on Jay. "You ever see a jeweler's bench, kid?" Jay shook his head. Rake nodded toward the curb. "You're looking at the cheap version." From the alley, a voice called, "Got something." Holt moved in. Jay followed, then caught himself and kept his hands visible like Holt warned. A tiny plastic disc was stuck to the brick, half hidden by grime. Holt peeled it off. "Tracking tag." Rake's mouth tightened. "They didn't find her." They followed her. Jay stared at the tag, thinking of Mara sitting alone, crying, already hunted before he ever showed up. Another man held out a crushed cigarette pack. Inside was a folded square of wax paper. Holt opened it carefully, a gray smear, and pressed into it, half a crowned symbol, sharp and deliberate like a test stamp. Jay whispered, "That's the mark." Holt's jaw tightened. "Copywork." A biker at the far end of the stop shined his light under the bench, then reached and pulled out a cheap prepaid phone taped to the underside, camera lens facing out. The screen was cracked, but the red recording light was dead. "They filmed it," the biker said. Holt took the phone and turned it in his hand, eyes narrowing. "They wanted proof, or they wanted to see how fast we came." Jay's throat went dry. "So this whole thing was a test?" Rake's gaze stayed flat. "Everything is a test." A car idled too long at the far intersection. Holt's head lifted a fraction, and every man around them shifted without a word. The car rolled on. The street stayed tense anyway, like it had learned a new rule. Then, an engine cut hard from the far end. 2 bikes coming in fast, lights off. Holt snapped, "Down." Jay dropped behind a parked sedan. Water soaked his knee through the denim. He heard boots splash. A low voice, close now. "Kid," it said, "come out. We're not here to hurt you." Jay didn't breathe. A hand slid under the bumper, searching. A gloved fist clamped that wrist and yanked. The man hit the side of the car with a grunt as Holt's crew folded him in, forearm across the throat, hands twisting him to the pavement. The second rider tried to swing his bike around, but Rake stepped into the street with a pistol leveled, calm as a stop sign. "Off," Rake said. The rider dropped the bike and raised his hands. Holt hauled the first man into the streetlight. Young, wet hair, eyes wide but not surprised, like he'd been paid to take a risk. Zip ties snapped tight. "Who sent you?" Holt asked. The man swallowed. "Burner call." "From who?" Holt pressed. "I don't know," the man blurted. "Blocked. Said the chapter would come back to clean up. Said to grab the wax and the tag. Said there'd be metal scrap. Take that too. And if I saw the kid..." Rake stepped closer. "If you saw the kid, what?" "Bring him," the man said fast. "Alive. They said he touched the ring. They said he might have seen the real one." Jay's blood went cold. "I don't know you." Holt's stare didn't move. "Why alive?" The man's eyes flicked to the ground. "Because he's proof," he whispered. "Because if he disappears, people talk. If he's alive, he can be used. That's what the call said." Holt leaned closer, voice low. "Used how?" The man shook his head, almost crying now. "I don't know, I swear. Just bring him." Rake's jaw worked like he wanted to hit him and knew he wasn't allowed. "They're treating a hungry kid like a chess piece," he muttered. Holt straightened. "Pack it." They moved fast. The two bikes were shoved into the gutter, engines killed. The taped phone, the wax, the tag, the scrap. Everything was bagged. The riders were loaded into the pickup. Jay was guided back into the van with a hand firm on his shoulder, steering, not comforting. On the ride back, Holt spoke into his phone in short bursts. Filings, casting scrap, tag, wax imprint, taped phone, 2 retrieval guys. Orders were kid alive, phrase used, real ring. The gates opened. Floodlights washed the yard. Inside the clubhouse, the main room was tight with bodies and low voices, like anger had filled the air and turned it thick. Dane stood at the long table with maps spread out. Mara was beside him, wrist-wrapped, face pale but controlled. When she saw Jay, her eyes flickered with guilt and something like relief. Holt laid out what he found. Wax paper, metal strip, the tracking tag, the taped phone, the flattened bullet. "They weren't improvising," Holt said. "They staged it. They recorded it. They came back for cleanup, and they want the kid alive. They said he might have seen the real ring." Silence hit the room. Dane's gaze went to Mara. "They tagged you." Mara swallowed. "I checked my car, my coat." "You can't check what you don't know exists," Dane said, voice quiet and dangerous. He looked at the phone. "They wanted to watch us bleed in real time." Holt set the black pouch down. Dane opened it and slid both rings into his palms. He held them under the light, rotating them slowly. "Mara," he said, "no guessing." Mara leaned in, eyes narrowed, breathing shallow. Then she pointed. "That one." "How?" Dane asked. "There's a dent," Mara whispered, "inside edge, from a kitchen drawer. I never fixed it." Dane found it, tiny, real. He set that ring down, then took the other and scraped the inside with his thumbnail. A thin line of dark coating flaked away, revealing brighter metal beneath, plated. Fake. A low sound moved through the room like a growl swallowed back. Dane set the fake ring down gently, like it was a grenade. "Someone had access," he said. "Close access. Close enough to copy weight, cut, mark." His eyes swept the men. "And someone thought they could hand me a fake crown and watch what I do." No one spoke. Even Rake looked suddenly careful. Dane pointed at Holt's evidence. "Pull every camera within 4 blocks, he ordered. "Traffic, stores, private door cams. I want the first time that sedan appears, and I want where it goes after." He nodded once toward the 2 captured riders being dragged past the hall. "Separate them. No stories shared. I want names or I want silence on my terms." Then Dane finally looked at Jay. Jay braced for the verdict. Dane didn't accuse him. He nodded once toward the bar. "Feed him," he said. "Warm him up. He's not leaving, but he's not starving in my house." A plate appeared in front of Jay minutes later. Hot stew, bread, steam rising like a miracle he didn't trust. Jay stared at it until Mara's quiet voice reached him. "Eat," she said. please." His hands shook as he lifted the spoon. The first bite burned warm down his throat, and his eyes stung from more than heat. Rake stood behind him, arms crossed, still suspicious, but he didn't knock the bowl away. That was the closest thing to permission Jay had ever gotten. Across the room, Dane turned back to the table. "Find who made the copy," he said. "Find the third piece, because the next time someone wears our mark, I want to know whose hands put it there." Jay kept chewing because stopping felt dangerous and because the truth hit him hard and simple. The third piece wasn't another ring. It was the person inside the chapter who helped make it. Jay ate fast, like the bowl might be taken away for a mistake he hadn't made yet. The stew burned his tongue, but he didn't slow down. Heat climbed into his chest and made his eyes sting. Hunger never left clean. Rake leaned on the bar, watching. "Look at that," he muttered. "He eats like he's been locked up." "I've been outside," Jay said, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. "That's still a cage." Mara's wrapped wrist rested on the counter. She kept glancing at Jay like she wanted to apologize and didn't know how. Once, quietly, she slid a second piece of bread toward him. Jay hesitated, then took it without looking at her because looking made it feel like a debt. Across the room, the clubhouse moved with quiet purpose. Men on phones, someone dragging a laptop to the table, evidence bags laid out like tools. It wasn't chaos, it was routine, and that scared Jay more than shouting would have. Down the hall, the captured writers were being separated. Jay heard one of them sob, then cut off abruptly when another voice went calm. "You don't have to cry," that calm voice said. "You just have to answer." The sobbing stopped. Boots moved, a chair scraped, then nothing, like the building had swallowed the sound on purpose. Holt passed the bar and tossed Jay a paper and a pen. "Draw him," he said. "The man who came out of the back seat. Focus on anything sharp. Scar, tooth, nose." Jay stared at the blank page. His hands shook from cold and adrenaline, and the fact that he'd punched someone with an empty stomach. He forced the pen down anyway. He sketched the attacker's jawline, the beard line, the way his eyes narrowed when he smiled. It came out rough, but it was something. Holt studied it, then nodded once and folded it like it mattered. "Good." Rake watched, unimpressed. He could draw anybody. Holt's eyes flicked to Rake. He could also draw nothing. He's drawing. Rake's mouth tightened, but he didn't push. Mara leaned in slightly, voice low. "His name?" Jay didn't answer right away. Names were handles. Handles got used, but she'd already been dragged into his night. "Jay," he said. "Jay," she repeated like she was trying to fix it in her head. "Thank you." Jay shrugged, pretending it didn't land. "Just don't get me killed." Mara's throat worked. "I'm trying." Holt called Dane into a back office. Rake drifted after them, and Jay hovered near the doorway until a biker's look warned him to stop. He stayed close enough to hear, because not knowing felt worse. A man with glasses tapped a laptop. "Got something on the taped phone," he said. "Memory's half fried, but there's a clip, short." The video played from under the bench, grainy legs, Mara's boots, the attacker's shadow, the gunshot cracking the audio. Jay heard his own gasp, thin and animal. Then, for one clear second, the ring flashed. The chapter, burning under the streetlight, before the clip cut out. "That's it?" Rake snapped. "Wait," the glasses man said, scrubbing forward. 3 minutes later, someone comes back. A hooded figure stepped into frame, face wrapped in a scarf, hands gloved. He crouched, reached under the bench, and peeled the taped phone away. In his other hand was something dark and small. A ring. Jay's mouth dried out. "That's when it disappeared." Holt nodded. "Not during the fight. After. That means the whole scene was staged to create chaos, then cleaned by someone who knew what to look for." Rake's eyes slid to Jay. "Or the kid handed it off." Jay snapped. "I was on my knees with a gun in my face." Dane's voice cut through, quiet. "Enough." Dane leaned closer to the screen. "Zoom the hands." The glasses man zoomed. Pixels broke, but a detail held. The cuff of the hooded figure's glove showed a thin stitched band, one of the chapter's colors, subtle but deliberate. Not a patch, not a full cut. A small strip you'd only wear if you wanted to be seen by the right eyes. Holt went still. "That's ours." Mara's voice turned tight. "So it's one of you?" Or someone wants you to think it is, Holt said, but his face didn't like the words. Dane didn't look at Mara yet. He watched the frame like it might blink. Pause it, Jay pointed. Right there, his wrist. For a split second, where the glove tugged back, black ink showed, a straight line and a small hook-like curve at the edge of a wrist tattoo. Holt exhaled once, sharp. I've seen that. Dane's eyes met Holt's. Holt didn't add another word. He didn't have to. The silence between them was its own answer. Dane walked back into the main room. Clear the room. Men moved out instantly. Soon it was only Dane, Holt, Rake, two senior guys, Mara and Jay. Jay's ribs throbbed in the quiet. Dane set the fake ring on the table. This is a message, he said. They want me reacting blind and loud. They want me burning the street looking for a piece of metal while the real move happens somewhere else. Rake's jaw clenched. So what's the move? We don't give them what they expect, Dane said. We find who made the plating. We find who wore our color at that bench. And we find who tagged my wife. Mara bristled. They tagged me twice, she admitted, then lifted her coat sleeve. When we got here, I felt something scratching. I thought it was a seam. Holt stepped in and turned the sleeve inside out. Sewn into the hem was a tiny second disc, smaller than the first, camouflaged under black thread. Jay's stomach sank. That was on you the whole time. Mara's face went pale. So they could have followed me here. Holt clipped the disc free and dropped it into an evidence bag like it was venom. If they had a live receiver close enough, yes, he said. But we're jammed in the yard, cameras, gates. They don't get in unless someone opens the door. Rake's eyes flicked around the room, suddenly sharp. Unless? Dane didn't react outwardly, but something tightened in his posture. Who had eyes on her route? He asked. One of the senior guys answered carefully. She left the diner alone, Mara snapped. I didn't tell anyone. Rake's tone turned ugly. Somebody still knew. Holt's phone buzzed. He listened, then his face tightened. We got a ping. Dane's eyes lifted. From the tracker? From the device waking when we powered it, Holt said. It reached for a network before it died. Tower hit is east, industrial strip, old machine shops. Rake let out a short laugh. Someone's stamping crowns in a machine shop. That's cute. It's not cute, Holt said. It means they've got tools, press, die, maybe a CNC engraver. They can copy weight, cut, and finish. And if they can do that once, they can do it again. Mara swallowed. They can put your mark on anyone. Dane tapped the fake ring once. Which is why we let them think it worked. Rake blinked. You want to let the fake ring go? I want the hand that picks it up, Dane said. The hand that thinks it's holding power. He turned his gaze to Jay. You're coming. Jay's stomach dropped. No, I told you what I saw. I gave you his face. I drew him. Dane's voice stayed level. They asked for you alive. That means you're part of their plan, whether you like it or not. Rake's mouth twitched. Chess piece. Mara stood. He's a kid. Dane looked at her, softer for one breath, then cold again. And predators love kids who think they can walk away. They disappear kids because nobody looks. Not in your neighborhood, Jay. Jay flinched at his own neighborhood being said like a diagnosis. Holt stepped between them. Jay, you sit in the van. You keep your hands visible. If you recognize the man from the sedan or the way he moves, you point. That's it. Jay wanted to say no again, but the word tasted like walking back into the cold with a target on his back. He nodded once, hated himself for it. Dane nodded to Holt. Bring the fake ring, he said. Not the real one. If they're watching, I want them seeing the bait. Holt pocketed the plated ring in an evidence sleeve. They moved toward the side exit. A prospect named Toby hovered near the hall, pale and sweating, holding a trash bag like he'd been told to clean up something he didn't understand. When he saw Dane, he flinched and tried to disappear into the kitchen. Jay watched him. Something about the kid's panic didn't fit the situation. Everybody here was tense, but Toby looked like he'd swallowed a siren. Rake noticed. You staring at the prospect? He looks like he's hiding, Jay muttered. Rake's voice went flat. Everyone's hiding something. Outside, bikes rolled toward the gate. Holt pushed Jay into the van's back seat and tossed him a knit cap and gloves. Cover your hands, he said. No prints anywhere near that district. Jay pulled the gloves on. They fit too well, like they'd been waiting. Rake climbed in across from him, close enough Jay could smell tobacco and cold leather. You try anything, Rake said quietly. I'll stop you before you blink. Jay stared back. I'm not trying anything. I'm trying to live. The van started. The gate slid open. Cold air rushed in, and the yard lights faded behind them. They cut through back streets instead of the main road. Warehouse fences slid by, graffiti washed pale by the van's headlights. Holt spoke into his radio in clipped bursts, calling positions, calling plates, calling a meet point like this was a routine run and not a kid's life hanging off it. Jay glanced back through the rear window. Toby stood in the doorway watching them leave, face white, fists clenched. When Jay met his eyes, Toby dropped his gaze fast, like he'd just been caught. Then the doorway widened, and a taller shadow settled behind Toby inside the clubhouse, close enough that Toby's shoulders tightened. Jay couldn't see who it was, but he felt the warning, and the van turned toward the dark road leading straight into the machine shop district. The machine shop district didn't feel like a neighborhood. It felt like the city's bones, bare concrete, chain-link fences, puddles that smelled like old oil. The streets were wider and emptier, built for trucks, not people. Every building looked closed, but Jay kept seeing tiny signs of life. A cigarette ember in a doorway, a curtain twitching in a second-story window, a security camera that tracked the van like it recognized the plates. Holt killed the radio and slowed 2 blocks before the tower hit area. The convoy peeled off, bikes disappearing into side lanes and loading bays, taking positions where they could see without being seen. The van rolled alone for the last stretch, ordinary in a place full of ordinary working vehicles. Rake sat across from Jay, still, eyes never stopping on one point for long. Whatever happens, he said, you don't open your mouth unless Holt tells you. Jay swallowed. I'm not trying to be a hero. Rake's lips barely moved. Good. Heroes die first. The van turned into a narrow lane between 2 warehouses. Holt stopped under a broken light and shut off the engine. Silence hit hard. In the distance, a train clanked along, metal screaming on metal. Holt leaned back, voice low. This is the block. Whoever woke that tracker up was within range of a receiver here. He pointed through the windshield. That building with the rolled-down bay doors, Keller Fabrication, cameras on the corners, fresh locks, too fresh for a place that closed 2 years ago. Jay peered out. The warehouse looked dead, but the asphalt in front of the bay doors was darker, like it had been washed recently. And there were tire marks that hadn't been there long, crisp in the damp. Rake's hand rested near his waistband. Smells like a trap. Everything smells like a trap, Holt murmured, echoing Rake from earlier like it was a rule. A voice crackled in Holt's earpiece, quiet. Eyes on the front, 2 inside the office window, 1 pacing. Holt answered with 1 word. Copy. Jay's heart kicked. There are people in there. Rake's eyes cut to him. No kidding. Holt opened the glove compartment and pulled out a small evidence sleeve. Inside, the fake ring sat on foam, dull and innocent. Holt held it like he hated it. Dane's voice came through Holt's earpiece, calm and close, like he was standing right outside the van. We don't storm it, not yet. We see who reaches. Holt clicked twice into the mic. Understood. Jay stared at the ring. How do you make them reach? Rake's gaze stayed forward. You give them the illusion of a win. A shadow moved in the side mirror. A chapter bike rolled up soundless with the engine low, rider masked by a helmet. The rider leaned in just enough to pass Holt a small brown envelope, then vanished back into the dark like he'd never existed. Holt opened it. Inside was a thin folded card, blank on one side, on the other, a set of printed coordinates and a time, 1:20. Under it, a single sentence in block letters, bring the crown, come alone. Jay's stomach tightened. They're talking to you. They're talking to Dane, Holt said. They want the king on the board. Rake snorted. Not happening. Holt tapped the time. We're early. That means we're in position before the hand reaches. Jay's mind raced. So we wait. Holt nodded once. We wait. They did. Minutes crawled. The warehouse stared back with its dark windows. Somewhere behind them, a dog barked once and went quiet. A semi rumbled past at the far end of the block, driver never looking into the lane. Jay tried not to think about the warmth of the clubhouse fading from his bones. He tried not to think about Mara's bruised wrist. Mostly he tried not to think about the words he'd just heard. Bring the crown. The crown was a ring. The crown was also a promise. 117. Holt's earpiece murmured again. Movement, east side, single vehicle. A pair of headlights swept across the far alley mouth, then went dark. A car rolled in without lights, coasting. Jay felt Rake's whole body tighten. The car stopped behind Keller Fabrication. Doors opened and shut softly. Two figures crossed the lot, both in hoodies, both moving like they knew exactly where the cameras didn't see. Holt whispered into the mic. "Let them come." Jay's pulse hammered. "What if they have guns?" Rake's eyes flicked to Jay, annoyed. "What do you think?" The figures reached a side door and knocked in a pattern. 3 quick, 1 slow. The door opened just enough to swallow them. Holt's jaw clenched. "They've got someone inside." Rake's mouth twisted. "No surprise." 119. Holt shifted the ring sleeve in his hand. "We need a drop." He opened the van door crack and glanced down the lane. 2 dumpsters sat near the loading bay, overflowing with scrap. A perfect place to hide a hand. A perfect place to hide a weapon. Holt looked at Jay. "You remember what I said?" Jay's throat was dry. "Hands visible." "And you point," Holt said. "That's all." Jay nodded, even though his body wanted to fold into the seat and disappear. Rake leaned in close, voice like gravel. "You bolt, I put you down. Not because I want to, because I have to." Jay met his eyes. "I won't bolt." Holt slid out first, low and controlled, moving like the cold couldn't touch him. He crossed to the nearest dumpster and crouched, placing the evidence sleeve beneath a strip of curled metal where it would be found fast by someone looking. Then he backed away, hands open, and returned to the van without hurry. 120. Nothing happened for 10 seconds. Then, the side door of Keller Fabrication opened again. One figure stepped out alone. No hoodie this time. Work jacket, dark cap, head down. He moved toward the dumpsters like he'd been called. Jay's chest tightened. The walk wasn't careful. It was practiced. The figure reached the dumpster, lifted the curled metal like he already knew what was under it, and pulled out the sleeve. He didn't open it. He just held it for a beat, like he was feeling the weight of the lie. Then he turned slightly, and the broken streetlight caught his wrist. A thin stitched band at the cuff. And above it, just above the glove line, black ink, a straight line with a small hook at the end. Jay's mouth went dry. "That's him," Rake's head snapped. "You sure?" Jay whispered. "That wrist, that tattoo, same as the video." Holt's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "Dane, we've got the hand." The mic clicked. Dane's voice came back instantly. "Confirm identity." Jay forced himself to look harder, to see past fear. The figure's face was half turned away, but the jawline, sharp. The beard line, trimmed. The same bored confidence, even in a different coat. "That's the guy from the sedan," Jay said, and his voice didn't shake this time. "That's him." Rake exhaled once, almost pleased. "Good." The attacker, now alone in the lane, tucked the sleeve inside his jacket and walked back toward the side door. Holt didn't rush him. He waited until the attacker's back was to the van, until the man was exactly where cameras and angles meant he had nowhere to run without being seen. Then Holt opened the door. He stepped out and said, "Drop it." The attacker froze like he'd hit an invisible wall. Slowly, he turned his head. He smiled. "You're early," he called softly. "That's why you're still alive." Rake moved out beside Holt, gun low but ready. "Hands," Rake said. The attacker lifted both hands in a lazy surrender. "Relax, I'm not here to fight." Holt's voice stayed flat. "Where's Mara's ring?" The attacker laughed under his breath. "Safe." Rake stepped closer. "You're going to tell us where." The attacker's eyes flicked past them, toward the van, toward Jay. "I was hoping the kid came," the attacker said. "Tell me something, Jay. Did it taste good? That heroic moment? The part where you think you mattered?" Jay's stomach tightened. "Shut up!" The attacker's smile sharpened. "See? He's learning to speak." Holt didn't move his feet. "Last chance. Ring." The attacker tilted his head. "You already have it." Holt's eyes narrowed. "We have a fake." "Do you?" the attacker said, and something in his voice changed, too calm, too sure. "Because I don't sell fakes, I sell access." Rake's gun lifted a fraction. "Stop talking in circles." The attacker held his palms higher, like he was being reasonable. "Okay, straight line. There's a door you can't open. There's a man you can't see. And there's a reason your boy Toby's hands were shaking when you left. Holt went still. Jay's blood turned to ice. Toby? The attacker smiled wider at Jay's reaction. Yeah, the prospect with the eyes like a trapped rabbit. You noticed him, didn't you? Rake's gaze cut to Holt, sharp. We left him at the house. Holt's mic clicked on, voice suddenly hard. Dane, he's talking about Toby. A beat of silence, then Dane. Say it again. The attacker leaned forward just a touch, like he was offering a secret. He's not a rabbit, he's a door. He opens when you push the right fear. He tapped his own wrist. You want your wife safe? You want your real ring back? You'll do what the note says. Holt's jaw clenched. You're stalling. I'm counting, the attacker said softly. Holt's eyes narrowed. Counting what? The attacker's gaze slid to the roofline of Keller Fabrication. Seconds. Rake's head snapped upward. A metal clang rang from inside the warehouse like a chain being dropped. Then a second sound, sharper, closer, like a roll-up bay door latch releasing. Holt's voice cut through the lane. Back! Rake shoved Jay down inside the van at the same moment the warehouse bay door began to rise with a grinding scream, spilling a strip of light onto the wet asphalt. And in that strip of light, Jay saw the silhouette of a man holding something that looked a lot like a ring press. And a gun. Rake's shove drove Jay down onto the van's floor. Jay's cheek hit cold metal, and the sound of the bay door grinding upward filled his skull like a siren. Holt was already moving. Door open, boots on asphalt, voice sharp but controlled. Cover! Holt snapped. Outside, the lane exploded into motion without noise. Chapter men appearing from shadows, fanning to angles they'd already chosen. Jay caught a flash through the gap under the van door. The attacker still standing near the dumpster, hands up, smiling like he'd rehearsed this part. The bay door rose another foot, spilling more light, and a silhouette stepped into it. Broad shoulders, work apron, something heavy in one hand. For half a second, it did look like a ring press. Then, the silhouette lifted his other hand. A gun. Jay's stomach dropped. A shot cracked. The sound bounced off the warehouse walls and came back doubled. Sparks jumped from the van's side panel. Rake swore and fired once. Not wild, not fast. Just a clean, ugly punctuation. The silhouette staggered backward out of the light. Holt grabbed Jay by the jacket collar and dragged him deeper into the van, keeping his own body between Jay and the open lane. Stay down, he hissed. No peeking. Jay clenched his teeth and stayed flat, hands pressed to the floor like the metal could anchor him. Outside, boots slapped puddles. A bike engine flared, then cut. Another shot popped, closer, followed by a shout that wasn't pain, just a command. Left, left! Holt's radio chirped. Dane's voice cut through the static. Status! Holt pressed the mic with 2 fingers. Warehouse doors the play, armed inside. We've got the sedan man outside. He's bait. A beat. Do not lose him, Dane said. Rake's voice came back hard. He's about to lose himself. Jay heard Rake move. Fast steps, then a thud like a shoulder hit flesh. A grunt. The attacker's laughter cut off. Holt stayed at the van door, weapon low but ready, eyes locked on the rising bay door. The door was halfway up now. The light inside showed more than a silhouette, tools on benches, a vise, metal shavings glittering on the floor like frost, and at the back, a work table with stamps laid out in neat rows, crowns. The man inside stumbled into view again, clutching his shoulder, gun still raised. Holt didn't rush him. He waited until the man's arm trembled, then spoke in a voice that didn't need volume. Drop it. The man tried to lift the gun higher. A second chapter man, masked, moving like he'd been born in shadows, appeared at the bay's edge and kicked the man's knees. The gun clattered. 2 boots pinned his wrist. The masked man stepped on the barrel like it was trash. The armed man's face twisted. You don't get it, he spat. You're too late. Holt stepped inside just enough to see the whole room. He scanned the corners, the rafters, the side doors. Clear, he barked, and men flowed in behind him, checking angles, pulling curtains, flipping lights. Jay's pulse hammered. The van door stayed open. Cold air poured over him. He forced himself to crawl up to the bench seat without rising into the line of fire. Through the windshield, he saw Rake with the attacker pinned against the dumpster, forearm across the attacker's throat. The attacker's cap had fallen off. Blood ran from his lip again, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. "You're not angry enough," the attacker rasped. "That's the problem." Rake shoved him harder. "You want me angry?" The attacker coughed out a laugh. "I want Dane angry." Holt's voice came from inside the warehouse. "Get in here." Rake dragged the attacker toward the bay. Jay's ribs screamed when he breathed, but he pushed himself up enough to see inside. The machine shop was too clean for a place running legit. On one bench sat a small digital scale. On another, a set of steel dies stamped with the crown symbol. A cheap engraver was clamped to a table, the bit still warm. And in the center, bolted down, was a compact press with a circular cradle sized for a ring face. Jay's mouth went dry. "You made it here." Holt glanced back at him. "You stay by the door," he ordered, like Jay was a dog he didn't trust. Jay stayed because the room smelled like metal and trouble. Rake threw the attacker into a chair and zip-tied him to it, tight and efficient. The attacker didn't resist. He stared at the press like it was a trophy. Holt lifted a ring blank with gloved fingers. It was unfinished, dull, the crown barely visible. "How many?" Holt asked. The attacker smiled. "Enough." Holt set it down and picked up a tray. Inside were finished rings, 6, 7, identical to Mara's at a glance. Jay's stomach rolled. Rake leaned close to the attacker. "Who's your inside?" The attacker's eyes flicked toward Jay, then back to Rake. "You already saw him," he said softly. Jay felt the words hit like ice. "I don't know you." The attacker ignored him. "A door is only a door," he murmured, "until somebody holds it open." Holt snapped, "Names." The attacker laughed again, and this time it wasn't fearless. It was delighted. "You'll eat your own," he said. "That's what the ring is for, not access, distrust." Holt's jaw worked. He turned, scanning the benches, and his flashlight caught something taped beneath a metal shelf. He ripped it free and slapped it onto the work table. A printed photo. Toby. Jay's stomach dropped so hard he thought he might throw up. The picture was recent. Toby in the clubhouse kitchen, carrying a crate, head turned like he didn't know he'd been photographed. Under the photo was a line of text, "Open at 1:40. Rake's eyes went flat. "They're timing him." Holt's radio chirped before he could answer. A strained voice came through, one of the men back at the yard. "Holt, we've got movement at the gate. Someone just tried a delivery entry. Wrong code. Prospect Toby he's gone. We can't find him." The room went still. Mara's voice wasn't on the radio. That made it worse. Holt pressed the mic. "Where's Mara?" A pause. Then, "Safe room." Dane moved her, but Holt, someone cut the camera feed in the hall for 12 seconds. Jay's skin prickled. 12 seconds was forever in a place like that. Holt's gaze snapped to the attacker. "This was never about the ring," Holt said. The attacker's smile widened, slow and cruel. "It was about the door," he whispered. Rake's gun came up a fraction. "You're going to tell us where he went?" The attacker's eyes stayed bright. "He went to earn his patch," he said. Holt grabbed the fake ring evidence sleeve from his pocket and shoved it into the attacker's chest. "This is what you wanted," Holt said. "You got it. Now talk." The attacker didn't even look at the sleeve. "You think that's the crown?" he asked softly. "That's a toy." Holt's voice dropped. "Then where's the real one?" The attacker finally met Holt's eyes. "On a hand you won't shoot," he said, "because it's yours." Holt didn't waste another word. He turned and barked, "Pack everything! Burn the benches! Take him!" "We're going back! Now!" Men moved fast and quiet, ripping power cords, snapping photos, scooping rings into evidence bags. Holt yanked Jay by the sleeve and shoved him toward the van. Jay stumbled in, breath punching out of him. "Toby's a kid," he said, voice raw. "He's scared." Holt slammed the van door. "Scared kids do stupid things," he said. The engine roared. Tires bit wet asphalt. The convoy reformed like it had never broken, bikes flanking the van as they shot back toward the yard. Jay pressed his forehead to the glass, watching warehouse lights smear into streaks. In the reflection, he saw his own face, pale, eyes wide, lips split, and behind it, Rake staring at nothing, jaw clenched like he was holding back something violent. Holt's radio hissed again. Dane's voice came through, colder than before. "They touched my cameras," Dane said. "If Toby opened a door, it won't be the last one. Everyone inside is suspect." Jay's stomach twisted as the van slammed over a pothole, and he realized the worst part wasn't that the chapter might start a war. The worst part was that the war was going to start at home. The yard lights hit them like an interrogation. Floodlights washed the gates, the stacked bikes, the gravel, turning every shadow into a thing that could hide a man. The gate slid shut behind the convoy with a heavy mechanical groan, and Jay felt the air change, the way a place feels when it becomes a cage on purpose. Holt didn't park near the main doors. He stopped the van sideways, blocking the service lane like he expected a car to come screaming through. Bikes rolled into position without being told. Men posted on corners. Two climbed the catwalk above the gatehouse, rifles low, eyes sweeping the road beyond the fence. Rake yanked the van door open. "Out! Move!" Jay stepped down and kept his hands visible, even though his ribs made it feel like breathing was a crime. He followed Holt toward the side entrance, and he could hear the building before they reached it. Voices clipped short, boots moving fast, radios hissing, the kind of controlled panic that meant something already went wrong. Inside, the main room looked the same but felt different. Chairs were pushed back. The long table was cleared and covered in maps again, but now there were extra lines, fresh marker strokes, circles around gates, camera positions, blind spots. The men weren't clustered in their usual groups. They were spaced out, watching each other. Dane stood at the center like a fixed point in a storm. Mara was nowhere in sight. Holt crossed to him and spoke low. "Machine shop confirmed. Press, dies, finished copies. We caught the sedan man and another shooter. We pulled a photo of Toby and a note. Open at 1:40. Yard team reports Toby missing. Hall camera feed cut for 12 seconds. Dane's face didn't change, but the room got colder anyway. "Where are the prisoners?" "On the way in," Holt said. "Separate." Dane nodded once, then looked past Holt and locked eyes with Jay. Jay's stomach tightened like he'd swallowed wire. "You," Dane said, and it wasn't a question. "Did you see Toby talk to anyone before we left?" Jay shook his head. "I didn't even know his name until—" "Answer what I asked," Dane cut in, calm as a blade. Jay forced his mind back. The kitchen doorway. Toby sweating, holding a trash bag like it weighed 100 pounds. The taller shadow behind him. Jay hadn't seen a face. "I saw him watching us leave," Jay said. "He looked terrified, and there was someone behind him, taller. I didn't see who." Rake stepped in, voice sharp. "He noticed Toby before any of us did." That earned Jay a quick glance from a few men. New, assessing. Not trust, interest. Dane turned to the room. "Lockdown," he said. "Full. No one in, no one out, not even to smoke. Phones stay on the table, cuts come off." A murmur rolled through them. That last order hit hard. Cutting a patch off in that room wasn't punishment. It was stripping identity. Rake's jaw flexed. "Dane!" Dane's eyes cut to him. Rake shut his mouth. Men started obeying anyway because arguing with Dane was like arguing with gravity. Vests came off, cuts laid on the table. Phones followed, one by one, until the tabletop looked like a pile of metal and screens. Jay watched it happen and felt a weird twist in his chest. These men lived by rules that terrified him, but they followed them like religion. Holt moved to a bank of monitors and rewound footage with a tech beside him. "Show me the 12 seconds, he said. The hall camera played, empty corridor, then Toby's skinny figure rushing past, head down. He paused at a service closet, glancing over his shoulder. His hands moved, fast, at the panel beside the door. Then the feed glitched to black. 12 seconds. The video returned with Toby backing away from the panel like it burned him. He slipped into the closet, and the door shut. Holt paused it. "He killed the feed himself," Holt said. Rake snorted, "or someone killed it for him." Dane didn't speak. He watched Toby's face frozen on the screen, eyes wide, lips moving like he was counting under his breath. Holt nodded to a runner. "Find the closet." Men moved. Boots thundered down the hall. The room stayed tense, listening. Jay's mouth was dry. "If he cut the camera, it doesn't mean he's—" "Don't defend him," Rake said instantly. Jay's head snapped. "I'm not defending him. I'm saying scared people get forced." Rake stared him down. "You talking like you know our world." Jay's voice came out rough. "I know fear. That's enough." For half a second the room went quiet, like someone had dropped a glass and they were waiting for it to break. Dane's gaze flicked to Jay. Measuring, unreadable. A radio crackled. "Closet is empty," a voice reported. "No Toby. There's a dropped keycard and a torn glove." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Keycard from where?" "Office wing," the voice said. Admin doors. That didn't make sense to Jay until he saw Holt's face change. Admin doors meant codes, files, the safe room's hallway. Dane's voice stayed quiet. "Mara," Holt answered before anyone else could. "Safe room, guarded." Dane didn't look relieved. He looked like he'd already decided that guarded meant tested. Another voice cut in from the gatehouse. "Delivery attempt, Dane. White van came up 10 minutes ago. Wrong code. Driver bolted when we held him. Couldn't get a plate." Dane's jaw tightened. They tried the door. Holt tapped the monitor, and Toby was the key. Rake stepped closer to Dane, controlled fury in his posture. "We hunt him." Dane nodded once. "Yes." Holt's tech slid a paper toward Dane. "We pulled a list," he said. "Every door swipe, every code attempt. The panel Toby touched logged a manual override." Dane's eyes tracked the printout. "Override to what?" The tech swallowed. "Back corridor, service gate into the admin wing." Jay felt a chill crawl up his arms. That wasn't a front door. That was a way to slip inside without walking through the main room. Dane turned and barked one order, and the entire clubhouse moved. "Teams, sweep the property. Start with the admin wing and the perimeter sheds. Check every crawl space, every container. No one searches alone." Holt grabbed Jay's sleeve. "You stay with me," he said, not asking. Rake opened his mouth to protest, then shut it when Dane glanced his way. They moved fast, down hallways that smelled like oil and old wood. Men checked corners with flashlights, doors with gentle pressure first, then force when gentle didn't work. Jay followed Holt's shoulder like a shadow, trying not to be in the way. The admin wing was quieter, cleaner. Offices, a locked door at the end with a keypad. Holt leaned in, listening. Nothing. Then Jay heard it. Faint, but real. A soft thump, like someone shifting weight inside a metal box. Jay stopped. "Wait." Holt turned. "What?" Jay pointed toward the storage corridor. Rows of locked cages and stacked crates. A few shipping containers used as secure storage. "That," Jay whispered. "I heard something." Rake wasn't there, but another biker stepped close, skeptical. Holt didn't waste time. He motioned and two men moved down the corridor, weapons low, flashlights cutting. They reached a blue container with a heavy padlock. One man pressed his ear to it. He went still and looked at Holt. "There's breathing," he said. Holt's face tightened. "Cut it!" Bolt cutters snapped. The padlock fell. The container doors creaked open. The light hit a cramped space filled with spare tires and boxed supplies. And in the far corner, curled against the wall, was Toby. His face was streaked with tears. His hands were bound with duct tape, but not tight enough to stop him from moving. His mouth was taped too, but the tape had ripped at one corner from his frantic breathing. He blinked at the flashlight beams like he'd been underwater and they'd just dragged him up. Holt stepped in and ripped the tape from Toby's mouth. Toby gasped like air was new. "I didn't," Toby choked out. "I didn't open it. I swear I didn't open it." Holt crouched, eyes hard but not cruel. "Then why kill the camera?" Toby shook his head fast, panic spilling. "Because he was watching. He said if I didn't do what he told me, he'd send the video. He said he'd send it to Dane and everyone would—" Toby's voice broke. "He said they'd kill me anyway." "Who?" Holt snapped. Toby's eyes darted toward the dark hallway like the answer could appear. "I don't know his name. He's not one of us, but he moves like he is. He told me where to touch the panel. He showed me once. Just once. He was behind me when you left. I tried to stop. I tried." Jay watched Toby's terror and felt his stomach twist. It wasn't the fear of a liar caught. It was the fear of a kid who'd been told there was no way out. Holt gripped Toby's chin lightly, forcing him to look up. "Did you give them a code?" Toby shook his head, crying now. "I gave him the first half. I swear I messed it up. I thought if it failed, it would buy time. That's why the delivery van had the wrong code." Holt's gaze sharpened. "You did that on purpose." Toby nodded, sobbing. "I didn't know what else to do." A boot step behind them. Dane appeared at the container doors, silent, eyes like storm glass. The corridor behind him was full of men who froze the second he arrived. Toby saw him and went limp, like all the strength left his bones at once. "Dane!" he whispered, voice shredded. Please, please. Dane didn't step closer. He looked at Toby the way a judge looks at a case file. You touched my cameras, he said quietly. You touched my doors. Toby shook so hard his teeth clicked. I didn't open it. I swear I didn't. I was trying to. Dane's gaze slid to Holt. He's alive, Dane said. Yes, Holt replied. And he sabotaged the code. That's why the delivery attempt failed. Dane's eyes returned to Toby. Who pressured you? Toby swallowed and looked down at his taped hands like they belonged to someone else. He said the crown would make me somebody, Toby whispered. He said I'd stop being a nobody if I just did one thing. Jay felt a cold wave pass through him. Crown, ring, power, same bait, different hook. Dane spoke one last question, voice still flat. Did he touch Mara? Toby's head snapped up, horrified. No, I would never. Dane held Toby's gaze for a long beat, then turned away from the container like he'd made a decision. Untie him, Dane ordered, then lock him in the back room with a guard. Nobody touches him until I say. Toby's sob turned into a broken breath of relief and terror mixed together. Dane looked down the corridor toward the admin wing, eyes narrowing. He's still inside, or he was, Dane said, almost to himself. And he's close enough to teach a door. Holt's jaw clenched. We sweep again, every inch. Dane nodded once. We sweep until the walls get tired. Jay stood in the cold corridor, ribs aching, and realized Toby wasn't the traitor they were hunting. Toby was the proof that the traitor knew exactly where to stand to make a kid crack. The second sweep didn't feel like a search. It felt like a purge. Doors opened, drawers dumped. Men who'd known each other for years watched hands instead of faces. The clubhouse was quiet enough that Jay could hear his own breathing, and he hated how loud it sounded. Toby was locked in the back office with a guard. Holt kept Jay close, like Jay was both witness and liability. Dane stayed in the center of it all, giving orders that were simple and final. Admin, roof, server closet, safe room hall twice. Nobody moves alone. Jay tried to watch for patterns. Some men looked relieved to be told what to do. Others looked like they were calculating routes, how to stand near exits without looking like they were standing near exits. In the kitchen corridor, everyone lined up under lockdown, cuts off, phones on the table. Most looked angry or scared. One man looked annoyed. He stood by the utility sink, rolling his sleeves up like this was an inconvenience. Mid-30s, thick forearms, a mechanic's posture. He kept his gloves on. Jay's eyes snagged on it. Holt noticed. What? Jay nodded toward the man. That guy. Him? Sutter? Keeps the generators running, Holt said, like it explained everything. Jay swallowed. He's wearing gloves, inside. Holt watched a beat longer. Cold hands. Jay shook his head. The guy from the bench video had gloves, and the cuff, stitched band, same strip. Holt's gaze sharpened. Sutter's sleeve cuff did have a narrow stitched strip, subtle, like a quiet flag. Holt didn't point. He just tapped his mic once, twice. Rake appeared like he'd been poured out of the wall, eyes following Holt's glance. Who? Jay answered before Holt could. Sutter, he matches the cuff. Holt spoke low into the mic. Dane, possible match, utility corridor, gloves, bandit cuff. Dane's reply came fast. Do not spook him. They didn't rush Sutter. They tightened the room. A chair accidentally blocked the back hallway. A man leaned at the side exit. Another drifted near the admin wing door. Normal motion, new geometry. Sutter noticed anyway. His eyes slid to the chair, then the exit, then Holt. His right hand went to his waistband. Rake stepped into his space, conversational. Hey, Sut, Dane wants a word. Sutter smiled without warmth. Now? Now. Sutter's elbow snapped into Rake's ribs. Then he bolted down the utility hall. Move, Holt barked. Bodies surged. Holt yanked Jay behind a doorway, shielding him from the stampede. Stay. Jay stayed for half a second, then slid after them at a distance, using corners like he'd learned on the street. He didn't want to be brave. He wanted to see where Sutter ran. Sutter hit the admin keypad door and punched numbers fast, gloved fingers, confident. The door clicked. He slipped inside and shut it. Holt and two men arrived a heartbeat later. He's in. Rake came up breathing hard, one hand on his ribs. That's not a generator guy. A text voice came over the radio. Inside door cameras are looping. Looping, like the 12 seconds, Dane's voice. "Open it!" A crowbar screamed in the frame. The door gave. Men poured into clean offices and down the short hall. The admin wing smelled like paper and toner, too normal for what was happening. The server closet at the end was half open. A faint electronic beep pulsed from inside, steady as a heartbeat. Holt raised a fist. Everyone froze. Then he pushed the door with his barrel. Sutter was hunched over a laptop on a shelf, cables running into the wall panel. He spun, eyes wide now. In his hand was a small black device with a blinking light, a jammer. Holt's voice stayed steady. "Put it down!" Sutter's breath came fast. "You don't understand!" Rake stepped in behind Holt, gun up. "We understand." Dane arrived silent. The room shrank around him the way storms shrink air. Sutter's shoulders sagged. "I wasn't going to hurt her," he said quickly. "That wasn't the deal." Dane's voice was quiet. "Whose deal?" Sutter swallowed. "Keller. He used to run with us years back. Got cut loose. He's got tools, people. He wanted you to look weak. He said if I opened one door and cut one camera, my debt disappears." Rake's lip curled. "So you sold the hall?" "I tried to sabotage it," Sutter blurted. "Like Toby. The delivery code, wrong on purpose. I thought it would buy time." Holt snapped, "You looped our cameras." "They had my sister," Sutter said, voice cracking. "Pictures, dates, and they said the kid would take the fall. Confusion, that's the crown." Jay felt the cold settle in his gut. Confusion. A fake ring. A missing ring. A homeless kid in the middle. It wasn't random. It was design. Dane stepped closer. "Did you tag my wife?" Sutter shook his head fast. "No, Keller did. He's got someone outside, someone who can get close. I never touched Mara." Dane looked at the laptop screen. "What are you doing right now?" Sutter went pale. "Sending the yard layout, gate shifts, cameras, so they can hit you where you're blind." Dane didn't blink. "Stop it." Sutter's fingers flew. Holt watched the screen, jaw tight. A bar filled, too slow, too late, and a message popped. "Sent." Sutter went still. It already went. The radios erupted instantly. "Gatehouse movement, 2 vehicles on the road. South fence, headlights, no plates. Service lane, someone's walking up like he belongs." Dane keyed his radio, voice calm over the chaos. "All hands, perimeter now. Mara stays locked, no exceptions. Take their eyes." Men sprinted, boots thundered away. Holt grabbed Jay by the sleeve. "With me." Hands visible. They moved fast down the admin hall, out into the main room, and toward the safe room corridor. 2 guards stood at the heavy door, weapons low. Mara's voice came through the steel, tight, controlled. "Dane?" Dane didn't answer her through the door. He only nodded to the guards, and the guards stayed planted like they'd become part of the frame. For 1 second, the small slot in the door opened, and Jay saw Mara's face, pale, eyes sharp, trying to stay steady. She saw Jay, and her expression flickered with apology and fear. The slot shut again. Holt pushed Jay onward toward the side window that looked out over the gate lane. Outside, floodlights made the gravel shine. A white delivery van rolled up and stopped at the keypad post. The driver leaned out like he'd done it 100 times. A man walked beside the van, relaxed, hands in his pockets, moving like the yard belonged to him. Then Jay saw the ring. Not matte, not scarred, too clean, too eager to be seen. The man raised his hand toward the camera and held the ring up like a badge. One of the gate guards' voices crackled. "He's showing a crown." Rake's voice came back sharp with pain and rage. "That's the play. Don't let him talk." Dane didn't yell. "Open the outer gate, not the inner. Funnel them." Mechanisms groaned. The outer gate slid back just enough to let the van nose in. The inner gate stayed shut, a wall of steel. The man with the shiny ring smiled and walked forward, palms out, talking even though nobody could hear him through glass. He pointed at the ring, then pointed at the inner gate like it should obey. A spotlight snapped brighter and pinned him. "Hands!" a guard barked from behind the steel. The man lifted his hands higher, still smiling, still acting like he was the one in charge. Then he stepped left, toward a blind angle, and Jay saw his wrist. A straight line, a hook. Jay's mouth went dry. "Same mark," he whispered. Holt's eyes narrowed. "Different guy." Dane's gaze stayed on the yard. "They're using the mark as a uniform." The man in the yard reached for his pocket. The lights died. Not all of them, just enough. Half the floodlights cut out, turning the yard into stripes of brightness and shadow. Sutter's jammer had friends. Holt swore and turned toward the hall. Then Jay moved. He didn't run into the yard. He ran to the generator panel room off the corridor, the one Holt had pointed out earlier. The door was unlocked. Jay yanked it open and saw a bank of switches, labels, and one red lever taped down with fresh black tape. Someone had prepped it. Jay ripped the tape off and slammed the lever back up. Floodlights flared to full, blasting the yard white again. Outside, the man with the shiny ring froze, caught mid-reach. A chapter shooter on the catwalk leveled down, steady. The man raised his hands quickly, smile gone. The van's driver tried to reverse. Bikes surged from the sides like wolves. Tires spit gravel. In seconds, the van was boxed. Doors yanked open. Driver dragged out and shoved to his knees. The shiny ring man was taken down hard, face to gravel, hands zip-tied behind him. Dane watched it all without moving. Holt grabbed Jay's shoulder, pulling him back from the panel. "You did that?" Jay's chest heaved. "The tape. Someone said it." Holt's eyes flicked toward the admin wing, then back to Sutter, who was being hauled down the hall by two men, wrists bound, face gray. Dane turned to Sutter. "You still want to tell me you were buying time?" Sutter's voice was raw. "I didn't tape that lever, I swear." Dane's eyes stayed flat. "Then Keller has more than one hand inside my house." Holt's radio chirped. "Driver's got a burner," a guard reported. "Text thread labeled Keller, meet point attached, 30 minutes. Dane's jaw tightened once. "Send it to Holt." Holt nodded, already moving, already turning the message into a map. Dane looked back at Jay, and for the first time there was something like hard, reluctant respect in his eyes. "You saw what the rest of us didn't," Dane said. Jay swallowed. "I just looked." Dane's gaze sharpened. "Keep looking." And as the yard filled with captured men and bright light, Jay understood what the ring really meant. It wasn't just protection, it was war. They laid the shiny ring man on the long table, wrists bound, cheek pressed to the wood. The delivery driver sat on the floor beside him, rocking slightly, eyes fixed on nothing. Phones, wallets, a roll of black tape, and two burner handsets were spread out like a surgeon's tray. Dane stood over them without a hint of hurry. "Name," he said. The man tried to grin. "Depends who's—" Rake's hand drifted toward his hair. Dane lifted two fingers and Rake stopped mid-motion, jaw tight. Dane didn't raise his voice. "Names." The grin cracked. "Rudy." Dane's gaze didn't leave Rudy's face. "And Keller?" "I don't—" Holt dropped a burner onto the table. The screen showed a thread labeled Keller, a pin, a time, and one line of instructions. "Dane. Talk." Rudy swallowed, eyes flicking to the room like he was measuring exits that weren't there. "Old Waterworks," he muttered. "Riverside, 2:45. Holt checked the message. 26 minutes. "Dane. What does he want?" Rudy's eyes slid toward Jay standing near the doorway, swallowed by Holt's spare jacket. "The kid," Rudy said, almost pleased, "and the crown." Jay's stomach dropped. Cargo, a bargaining chip, a problem with a face. "Why the kid?" Holt asked. Rudy's smile came back meaner. "Because he's the story. Homeless kid saves the wrong woman, touches the ring, sees the myth." Rudy's eyes glittered. "Then he disappears. Or better, he's found with it, dead in some ditch. Everybody sees your mark on a nobody and asks how it got there." Holt's voice went flat. "A frame. A bonfire," Rudy said. "You'll hunt your own for the leak. The city watches you bleed. Keller takes what's left." Dane straightened. "He doesn't get the kid." Rudy's smile thinned. "Then your wife pays." The word wife tightened the room like a wire being pulled. Dane didn't look away. "Where is Mara?" A guard answered from the hall, too quick, like he'd been waiting for the question. "Safe room, door sealed, 2 on it." Holt's phone buzzed. Another message from Keller. "No extra eyes. Bring the kid, bring the crown, or she's alone." Before they moved out, Dane walked to the back office where Toby sat on a chair, wrists free now but guarded, face blotched from crying. Toby jerked at Dane's presence like he expected a punch. "I didn't open it," Toby said fast. I swear I tried to—" Dane held up a hand. "You live," he said, "because you tried." Toby's breath stuttered. "He said you'd kill me." Dane's eyes stayed flat. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be gone." He leaned closer, voice quiet. You tell me one thing that matters, you keep living. You lie to me once, you stop. Toby nodded so hard it looked painful. I don't know his name, he whispered, but he smelled like machine oil. And he had black tape, fresh, on his thumb, like he'd been taping wires. Dane's gaze flicked, sharp. Tape again, another hand, another prep. He stepped out and gave one short order to Holt in passing. Check everyone's hands. Men lined up in the hall and opened their palms on command. Some did it with anger, some with pride, some with hands that trembled. Holt's light ran over knuckles and cuffs, looking for fresh glue, fresh thread, fresh tape. Most hands were clean. One set wasn't. A guard at the safe room corner had a thin smear of black adhesive on his glove seam, like he'd recently peeled tape and forgotten to wipe it. Holt's eyes lingered a beat too long. The guard held Holt's stare without blinking. Holt didn't call it out. Not here. Not with Mara 10 feet away behind steel. He only nodded once, like he'd memorized the face, then turned and kept moving. Dane turned toward the safe room corridor. Mara. Her voice came through the steel, tight and controlled. Dane. The door stays shut, Dane said. A pause. Then the slot opened. Mara's face appeared, pale, furious, trying not to show the tremor in her lower lip. Her eyes found Jay behind Holt. Jay, she said. Jay stepped forward before Holt could stop him. Yeah? Mara swallowed. I'm sorry, she said, and it wasn't just guilt. It was a promise she didn't know how to keep yet. You did a good thing at a bad stop. Jay wanted to tell her to stop saying his name like it made him real. He only nodded once. Mara's gaze flicked to Dane. Don't trade a kid for me, she said. Dane's voice was quiet. I'm not trading anything. The slot shut. Locks clunked. Dane turned back to the room and the fear sharpened into decisions. Holt with me, rake perimeter. 2 bikes wide, 1 tail, quiet, no colors. He looked at Jay. Kid rides in the armored SUV, no doors unless Holt says. Jay's throat went dry. I'm not bait. Dane stepped close enough that Jay could smell cold leather and coffee. You already are, he said under his breath. The second you fed her, Keller wrote your name into this. The difference is whether you die blind or you see. Jay hated that he nodded, but he did. They moved like a drill team. Bikes rolled out first, lights low, engines throttled down. The SUV followed, heavy doors, thick glass. Jay sat in the back seat with his hands on his knees, forcing himself to breathe through pain. Holt slid a small earpiece across the console without looking back. Put that in, he said. If I say down, you go down. If I say still, you go still. Jay fitted it in his ear, the rubber cold. Okay. Fog thickened near the river. The old waterworks rose ahead, brick, rust, broken windows, surrounded by cracked concrete and weeds. Holt killed the headlights at the last turn. The SUV rolled into the yard and stopped by a loading platform. Bikes fanned out and vanished into darkness like they'd been swallowed by it. Dane stepped out alone into the open, hands empty, posture relaxed like he'd come to settle a debt instead of start a war. A cheap speaker crackled from somewhere high. Dane? Dane didn't move. Keller? A laugh echoed off Brick. Still calm. That's why I liked you. A man on the platform slid a small cooler into the yard. It scraped along concrete and stopped near Dane's boots. Keller's voice. Open it. Dane didn't rush. His eyes stayed on the roofline, the broken windows, the dark pockets where rifles lived. Holt's whisper came through Jay's earpiece, calm but sharp. You see the third window left? That's a barrel. Jay stared until his eyes hurt. He saw it, a thin line, barely there. Dane nudged the cooler lid with his boot. It popped. Inside was a phone on a live call. Mara's face filled the screen. She wasn't bleeding, but she was bound to a chair, hair knocked loose, eyes wide and furious. Behind her, a strip of concrete wall and darkness, not the safe room, somewhere else. Jay felt cold flood his chest, the sealed door, the guards, the 12 seconds. It all landed at once. Holt's whisper inside the SUV turned ugly. How the hell? Keller's voice went soft, almost intimate. Doors open, he said, even the ones you swear are sealed. Dane's shoulders tightened. Let her go. Crown, Keller said. Kid, then she walks. Dane reached into his jacket slowly and held up a small evidence sleeve between 2 fingers, the plated ring, dull under the yard's weak light. Keller laughed like Dane had told a joke. "That's not a crown," he said. "That's a toy. I want the one with history." Dane's voice stayed steady. "You'll get what you earned." Keller's tone sharpened. "I earned your fear, Dane, and I'm not leaving without it." Jay's hands clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. Keller's voice rose through the speaker. "You brought him? I want to see his face. The one-meal hero." Dane's eyes flicked toward the SUV for one beat. Holt didn't look back. Keller chuckled. "Hiding him. Smart, but I already own his story." Jay pressed closer to the glass and saw movement low by the platform, crawling toward the SUV, using broken concrete as cover. A second shape moved above, slow, lining up a shot. Jay's throat locked. "Jay," Holt said through the earpiece, still calm. "Talk to me." Jay forced air out. "Left," he rasped, then louder. "Left! Platform! He's crawling!" Holt slammed into reverse and swung the rear away. The crawler lunged and missed the bumper by inches, hands scraping metal. A shot cracked from above. The rear window spiderwebbed, the thick glass holding with a deep, sickening pop. Jay dropped flat, forehead against the seat, heart screaming. Dane's voice cut across the yard like a whip. "Now." Darkness erupted into engines and light. Chapter bikes surged in from both sides, headlights flaring. Portable floods snapped on, washing the roofline. A man on the second story tried to run and got tackled hard. Another fired twice and vanished behind a brick column. Keller's speaker died, static, then silence. Holt punched forward, dragging the SUV out of the lane. Jay lifted his head just enough to see Dane sprinting for the cooler, the phone still glowing on the ground, like an eye that refused to close. Mara's lips moved on the frozen frame. Jay couldn't hear her, but he could read it. "Don't." The screen went black, and for one clean second, the only sound was Dane's boots on concrete as he ran straight into the open yard. Dane didn't duck. He ran straight into the open yard, eyes locked on the dark windows above. Chapter lights snapped across the second floor, catching shapes trying to retreat. A rifle barrel vanished. Someone shouted a warning that got swallowed by engines. Holt kept the SUV rolling, dragging Jay out of the kill lane and tucking the rear behind a concrete pillar. The spiderwebbed glass groaned, but held. Jay stayed low, heart punching his ribs. "Where's Keller?" Holt barked into his mic. Rake's voice came back through static. "Not on the roof. He's below. They're moving inside." Dane hit the loading platform steps and disappeared through a side door as chapter men flooded the yard. Shots cracked from inside, tight bursts, then silence, then another crack like somebody testing the air. Jay lifted his head and saw the cooler still in the open. The phone lay beside it, screen black. A thin cable ran from the speaker box down into a rusted conduit behind a stack of pallets. "Cable," Jay breathed. Holt followed his gaze. "Yeah." "It doesn't go inside," Jay said. "It goes down." Holt traced the conduit with his light. It led to a steel hatch in the concrete, half hidden by weeds and old chains. Holt keyed his mic. "Dane, hatch outside! Cable runs to it, underground!" Dane's voice came back, clipped. "Hold it! Nobody opens until I'm there!" Holt planted 2 men on the hatch. Jay stayed behind the pillar, breathing through pain. Then Dane reappeared, moving fast, face set, with Rake behind him, one hand pressed hard against his ribs. "Keller's using intake tunnels," Rake rasped. Dane reached the hatch. "Open!" Bolt cutters snapped the chain. The hatch lifted with a wet metallic groan, and cold air rose from below. A ladder dropped into darkness. Holt looked at Jay. "You stay." A muffled sound drifted up through the opening, short, choked, like someone fighting tape. Jay's throat tightened. "That's her," Holt swore once. "Behind me, 1 inch off my back." They went down. The ladder rungs were slick with condensation. Below, the tunnel opened into a narrow concrete corridor lined with old pipes. A dim work light flickered ahead. They rounded a bend and hit a heavy steel door half ajar. Fresh scratches marked the lock. Dane pushed in. A low room, old pump controls, a folding table. On it, a laptop, a handheld radio, and Mara's real ring sitting beside wire cutters like it was just another tool. Mara was tied to a chair, mouth taped, eyes blazing. The moment she saw Dane, the fight in her face cracked into something raw. Dane crossed the room and ripped the tape off carefully. Mara sucked in air hard. I told you not to trade, she whispered. I didn't, Dane said. Holt cut her bonds. Jay froze near the doorway, chest heaving. Mara's eyes found him. Jay, she breathed, like saying his name anchored her. A slow clap echoed from the dark end of the room. Keller stepped out from behind a row of pipes, smiling like this was theater. In his right hand was a pistol, steady and casual. In his left, a copy ring pinched like bait. You came anyway, Keller said. Kings always do. Dane didn't raise his voice. Put it down, Keller's smile held. I'm not here to win a gunfight. I'm here to crack you. Doubt does more damage than bullets. His pistol didn't move. Bring me the kid and the crown, or she never leaves. Mara's voice cut in, hoarse. You used kids. Keller's eyes slid to her. Kids are easy doors. Jay felt heat rise in his face. Toby tried to stop you, he said. So did Sutter. Keller's smile thinned. And they'll still get blamed. Dane took one slow step. Keller's gun tracked him. Jay watched Keller's left hand, ring loose, ready to toss and make everyone scramble. Don't chase it, Jay blurted. Keller's fingers twitched. Jay kicked the folding table sideways. The laptop skidded, the radio bounced, and the real ring slid toward Dane instead of toward Keller. Keller cursed, and in that tiny break, Rake fired once, into the pipe behind Keller with a sharp clang. Keller flinched and Holt slammed him down, wrist twisting, gun knocked free. Keller hit the wet concrete hard. Dane pinned Keller with a boot to the shoulder, controlled and heavy. Rake zip-tied his hands behind his back. Keller coughed and tried to smile anyway. Mara stood, shaking, and Dane caught her by the elbows. You're safe, he said, quieter now. They moved fast, up the ladder into floodlight, back through the yard. Outsiders were already on their knees, bound and silent. Keller was dragged like a bag of wet clothes, still trying to look proud. On the ride back, Holt's radio spit the part Jay still couldn't stop thinking about. Safe room guard missing, a voice reported. One of the two. His phone's on the table, but his jacket's gone. Dane's eyes went flat. That's the door, he said. Back at the clubhouse, the tension shifted the second Mara walked in alive. Men exhaled. Then, Holt pulled camera playback in the hall outside the safe room and rewound until the 12-second blackout. The screen showed the slot opening. A gloved hand slid in a key card. The safe room guard, one of the ones who'd sworn he was planted, stepped aside like he was making space for someone important. Mara's shape appeared at the doorway, resisting, and the guard shoved her forward, fast, into the service corridor where cameras didn't cover. Holt paused the frame on the guard's wrist, a smear of black adhesive at the glove seam. Rake didn't speak. He just walked out. 30 seconds later, the sound of a body hitting a wall echoed down the hall. Rake dragged the missing guard into the main room by his collar. The guard's eyes were wild, like he'd been running since the second he left the safe room door. I didn't touch her, the guard blurted. I just moved her like he said. Dane stepped close. Who? The guard's voice cracked. Keller. He said if I opened one path, my brother walks out. He said he had paperwork, photos, The guard's eyes flicked to Jay and flinched, like even the kid felt like a witness now. He told me the chapter would eat itself. He told me to make it look clean. Dane's voice stayed quiet. You opened my wife's cage. The guard shook his head hard. I tried to buy time. I told the delivery van the wrong. You're not Toby, Rake said, and there was no mercy in it. Dane lifted one hand and the room went still again. He lives, Dane said, until Holt finishes the whole chain. Then we decide. Holt nodded once, already moving, already turning confessions into names. Dane stood at the center of the room with Mara's real ring in his palm. He looked at his men first. Tonight we got tested, he said. We didn't fold. His eyes landed on Toby, guarded in the corner, face wrecked from fear. Prospect tried to buy time, Dane said. He lives. Then Dane looked at Jay, and the room followed. This kid had one meal, Dane said. He gave it away. He took a gun to the face so my wife could breathe, and when Keller tried to make us chase metal, the kid saw the trick. Dane walked up to Jay and held out a set of keys, real, heavy, cold. Room behind the shop, he said. Bed, heat, lock on the door. You work mornings, learn engines afternoons if you want. Holt gets you papers, school if you'll take it. Jay stared at the keys like they were fake. Why? Dane's voice softened just enough to hurt. The chapter doesn't repay debts with cash, he said. We repay them with a life. Jay closed his fingers around the keys, feeling the metal bite his palm, proof it was real. Mara slipped the real ring back onto her finger and stepped close to Jay, careful of his bruises. Thank you, she said again, quiet, for seeing me. Before Holt left, Jay cleared his throat. That ring, it's not jewelry, is it? Mara glanced at Dane, then back to Jay. It's a promise, she said. It means this place is a chapter house, a family. It means when you wear it, you're not alone. Dane didn't smile, but his voice was steady. And it means people don't take from you anymore. Not while you're under this roof. A prospect brought a cardboard box and set it at Jay's feet. New boots, thick socks, a beanie, a heavy coat that actually fit. Another set a plate on the table without saying a word. Jay didn't know how to react, so he did the only thing he understood. He nodded once and started putting the boots on. They walked him to the back of the property, to a small room above the garage. Clean. A bed. A heater humming. A door that locked from the inside. Holt shoved a paper bag into Jay's hands, clean clothes and a cheap phone. Not charity, Holt said. A line. If you need us, you call. Jay took a shower that felt like it might peel the street off him. He stood in the tiny room afterward, staring at his own face in the mirror, bruised, thinner than he should be, eyes still wide like he was waiting for someone to take everything back. He put the keys on the nightstand and lay down on the bed fully dressed, because habits didn't die in one night. The heater hummed. Somewhere below, an engine started, then another, then settled into an even idle like a heartbeat. Outside the small window, the black sky started to thin at the edges. Not daylight yet, just the first hint that night wasn't endless. Jay listened to it changing, slow and quiet, and realized he'd made it to morning without running. He got up once, just to test the lock. Key turn, click, solid. Then he sat back down like the sound itself was medicine. Jay rolled onto his side, stared at the locked door, and finally let his shoulders drop. For the first time in years, he closed his eyes and knew nobody could walk in unless he allowed it.